about that.
Hi, my name is Joseph, and today I'm refuting a speech that's in favor of euthanasia. Euthanasia is the act or practice of killing someone who is very sick or injured in order to prevent any more suffering. The speech that I am refuting today uses a main claim that states, in situations of disease and illness, a person should be given the option to end their life with the use of euthanasia. I believe that this claim is problematic because euthanasia procedures are still very undeveloped and they have more disadvantages than advantages. Now, let's take a look at some of the supporting evidence. The first supporting claim that my opposition uses is, regardless of how harsh it may sound, if someone is struggling through a sickness and wishes to die, they should be able to obtain the right to do so. I believe that this claim is problematic because people with immune compromised or compromised immune systems may also have compromised decision making. This can be supported by a study that was done at the University of Brussels, in which they offered euthanasia procedures to patients, but they made them wait because they postponed the procedures. So after a short postponement of the procedures, 61% of the patients decided to cancel the procedure. This means that when there was time given to think about the procedure, that the majority of patients decided not to go through with the procedure. So all in all, I believe that it is problematic to give immune-compromised patients the choice of euthanasia because their decision-making may also be compromised. Continuing on, my opposition's second supporting claim is there are many ways of initiating euthanasia, and each method can have different outcomes. This claim was problematic because there was no interpretation of the data. My opposition explains 3 different ways that euthanasia can be initiated, but they don't go into detail about why this matters to the claim. And according to Brockride's model of argument, data must contain an inferential leap and go past the data and arrive at a conclusion. So I believe that this claim should be dismissed because it is not relevant to the main argument because it only contains data. And in the final supporting claim that my opposition uses, they state, while euthanasia isn't favored by all, there are many pros of the concept that can be used in swaying the opinions of those not easily convinced. I believe that this claim is problematic because it provides bad inferences connecting euthanasia. It provides bad inferences connecting euthanasia and convincing people that of the pros. One of the main connections that I have a problem with is that it uses hospital overcrowding as a pro to why euthanasia procedures should be done. And I believe it's problematic because it's suggesting that hospitals are trying to get rid of people and that killing them may be a good way to do this. Furthermore, I believe that there are better methods of making room in hospitals if overcrowding is a real problem. Now, such as like healing sick patients. Now, obviously, healing sick patients is no new idea, but with euthanasia procedures available, they tend to hinder the prevalence of healing sick patients with incurable disease. As Dr. Irina Shayla explains, euthanasia may discourage research for new cures and treatments for incurable diseases. This is because funding and research does not go towards curing diseases if it goes towards euthanasia procedures. So all in all, I believe that this claim diminishes the main argument because considering hospital overcrowding as a factor for initiating euthanasia procedures can lead to a slippery slope. All in all, I do believe that my opponent's claim was very interesting and highly controversial, but the evidence that they used to support the claim lacks some main fundamental characteristics. that make a complete argument.
It's getting too controversial in here.
They'll just miss out on the quiz at the end.
Too controversial, but yeah, at least you're being challenged.
All right, Joseph, the definition's okay. I don't think that there was a lot of controversy on that, so you don't really want to spend too much time on it. Your position is that the disadvantages of pursuing euthanasia as an alternative outweigh any advantages that would be available. So one of the first things that you need to talk about is what those advantages are. Did the advocate provide any advantages to euthanasia, and then could you diminish those advantages? And I'm not sure that you have done a very thorough job of that. I think you do develop some disadvantage arguments, though, and the problem is that now we have to contrast those to the position that the advocate has taken, and you don't really talk about that part of the equation. You're just talking about the one side. On the one side where you do make your argument, you suggest that people with compromised immune systems often have compromised decision making. And you've got an interesting study that you make a reference to that suggests that once a delay has been put into place, people often pull back from that initial decision. I think there's a further argument that needs to be developed here, and that is that there's likely to be people making the choice too quickly, people making the decision under some kind of pressure, maybe even with an expectation of, like you said on the third point, oh, we're going to save some money if we go early, but when they get a chance to think about it, they're going to feel differently about it. But the problem is, if euthanasia is legal, we're not going to have that kind of option. It'll just be, you make the decision, then it's a done deal. I can kind of see the way that argument is going there, and I think that it could be developed pretty effectively into a counter argument. The second point, there's no, you kind of challenge the reasoning that the advocate is presenting. You say there's a lack of inference here. You're trying to use the Brock-Reedy model to suggest that there's not really something controversial on this particular point, and it was not very clear to me the point that you were trying to make here. So I think there's an inference that the advocate's drawn that you have a problem with, but it's not very clear to me what the problem is that you have with that inference, and it needs to be explained a lot more thoroughly if you're going to reject its relevance and suggest that it doesn't matter. The third argument that you make, like I said, is again not responsive to the advocate's argument, but it's, well, not directly, because you do suggest that the notion that costs would be a reason for doing this is, in fact, likely to be a reason for not doing it. We're going to have hospitals that are going to be interested in killing people to make space and save money as opposed to curing people, which is generally what hospitals have been told to do or supposed to be doing. I did think you had an interesting secondary argument there that suggested that research might decline in this area in doing certain kinds of health research if euthanasia is available. I think there's a good argument to be made there, but it needs to be developed a little bit more. Way too much reading in the presentation, so you got to be careful about that too.